Hello, you're watching Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Julia Kim, and these are the headlines on the continent. Reporting from the front line in Libya this week, we bring you a series of stories from the war-torn country. Our reporters begin near the capital Tripoli, where militia are trying to fight off attacking forces from the east. Ivory Coast prosecutors announced a fresh trial for former political leader Charles Blé Goudé after his acquittal at The Hague. A minister under former President Laurent Gbagbo, Blé Goudé, says he's the victim of judicial harassment. And it may be the only African nation to allow same-sex marriage, but transgender activists say South Africa still has a long way to go. Welcome back to the programme. This week, we're bringing you an exclusive series of reports from Libya, from the west and the east of the country. In our first instalment, we head to the front line of the conflict, which has been going on for over half a year now, near Tripoli. General Khalifa Haftar, a strongman from eastern Libya, launched an offensive to take back the capital in April. But since then, the battle has reached an impasse, with Western Libyan militias, who were once rivals, coming together to fight Haftar's forces. France 24's team on the ground sent us this report.
War has been dragging on for 7 months now on the outskirts of Tripoli.
All this was theirs. It belonged to the enemy. All this was under the control of Haftar.
We're embedded with fighters from Misrata, manning the front line in a now deserted neighbourhood some 10 kilometres from the centre of Tripoli. It's not a regular army defending the capital, but a multitude of militias from western Libya.
We have to enter here.
We continue on foot to avoid being spotted. Troops fighting for General Haftar are just a few hundred metres away.
Down.
Small groups of militia fighters man sniper positions around the clock in this semi-urban battlefield of abandoned homes.
You see that explosion? It was a strike by a Coronet missile.
You can hear their voices. They were shouting.
But another sound worries these fighters far more. A drone overhead.
That's a drone which comes from the Emirates or Saudi Arabia.
Since June, the battle for Tripoli has increasingly played out in the skies.
Right now, they're warning us about the enemy drones. There is movement in front. The enemy is moving. We have to deal with that.
The UN Special Envoy called Libya possibly the largest drone war theatre in the world. The unmanned aircraft provide cover for an enemy advance on the ground.
The enemy's there.
There, by the tree. Here, aim to the left.
Incoming fire intensifies in yet another game of cat and mouse on the fragmented front lines around Tripoli.
So once again, we're pulling back from the front line because the men here are alarmed about the prospect of drones. One thing they're really concerned about in this long, drawn-out conflict now is being hit from the air.
Well, Ivory Coast's former political leader Charles Blé Goudé has told France 24 that he is the victim of judicial harassment. Now, his comments come after prosecutors in Abidjan announced that he would face a fresh trial at home. Earlier this year, Blé Goudé was acquitted on charges of crimes against humanity by the International Criminal Court. A former minister under President Laurent Gbagbo, he's accused of torture, murder and rape during the post-electoral violence of 2010 to 11. Some 3,000 people died after Gbagbo refused to accept defeat to rival Alassane Ouattara, who remains in power. Here's Charles Blé Goudé speaking to France 24 earlier.
It's a pity that when one of your political opponents simply thinks differently from you, you immediately try to put him in jail or to keep him out of the country. I denounce this judicial harassment targeting the political opponent that I am. On some days, I am prosecuted for the mistreatment of prisoners of war. And now, on other days, I am being prosecuted for rape and homicide. It seems that the Ivorian justice system itself does not know what it is prosecuting me for. The goal is clear: to exclude me from taking part in my country's politics.
Well, let's turn now to Gambia, which is spearheading an effort to sue Myanmar for genocide at the UN's top court. The lawsuit accuses Buddhist-majority Myanmar of using their army to systematically target the Rohingya minority in Rakhine State. Gambia said it was acting on behalf of the 57 nations of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation. The first hearings at the International Court of Justice take place in December. Rights groups have hailed the move as the first judicial scrutiny of Myanmar's military campaign, which forced almost 750,000 Rohingya Muslims to flee the country. Now, South Africa was the first country in the world to ban discrimination based on sexual orientation back in 1996. And today, it's still the only African nation to allow same-sex unions. Yet, transgender activists say their community has largely been forgotten in the fight for equality. Pierre Delheur has their story.
Beneath a bridge in the Cape Townian suburb of Observatory, a network of blankets strung together have become a refuge for transgender sex workers. Outcast because of who they are, many of them end up living on the streets.
We're sick and tired of being here where we are. We want to go and have a life, get a job, be ourselves, stand on our own 2 feet. I don't want to get on the age of 40, 45 and still here. We don't ask for class, we don't ask for class, we don't ask for money, just to have a home.
South Africa's constitution is the first in the world to expressly forbid discrimination on grounds of gender or sexual orientation, but doesn't explicitly prohibit discrimination against transgender people. Estranged from their families and excluded from the workplace, many of these trans women have resorted to selling their bodies for sex. As well as being illegal, prostitution is very much frowned upon within the LGBT community, forcing sex workers to live in the margins of society.
Many of our community members that also engages within sex work are also excluded from the formal labor market in the country, have been excluded from education opportunities, have been excluded from other resources within the country that has resulted in them being marginalized in a very particular way.
Assigned male at birth but identifying as women, some 40 homeless transgender sex workers have found comfort and unity and have created the Sisters of the Castle. Since then, the group has become a growing voice on issues such as transgender homelessness, the legalization of sex work, and better access to health care. Most importantly for its members, it's become a family.
When we found sisterhood, I finally found a family. I found a home where I can be and who I am.
In August, the sisterhood was featured in a magazine, highlighting their stories, their advocacy, and the perceptions and assumptions surrounding transgender people in South Africa.
People are gonna know who we are and what we are, and they're gonna read in the book what the lifestyle all the girls are facing and the struggles that we've been through. That made me feel very happy because people around the world is going to know the struggle we as sisterhood transgenders are facing.
Well, Zimbabweans are asking their government to show them the money after new banknotes failed to appear. There's been no word from the country's central bank, which was meant to distribute the new $2 and $5 bills this Monday. The government says the low denomination notes would help curb the country's nearly 400% inflation rate and acute cash shortage. But analysts say the new cash will only feed the black market. The country back in June unexpectedly reintroduced the Zimbabwe dollar as its official currency in an attempt to ease its economic crisis. And finally, South Africa's Springboks have completed their nationwide victory tour in Cape Town. Captain Siya Kolisi lifted the World Cup trophy before a sea of ecstatic fans. You can see him there on top of that tour bus. The country's first black captain addressed the crowd in front of the City Hall, the same place where almost 20 years earlier, Nelson Mandela made his first major speech as a free man.
Just take a look around you. There's different races, different people from different backgrounds, but look how you're making it special for us. So I'm saying it's time for us South Africans to stop fighting, stop arguing. Let's put South Africa first, we agree, and we move forward as a country. Thank you so much, guys. We appreciate you.
A well-deserved win there. That's more news from us coming up in just a few minutes. Stay tuned.